say a couple of things before I start. Because I saw the funniest cartoon that I've seen for years in private eye this week, and there's two blokes walking down the road, and one saying to the other, do you remember when only poor people were poor? And it is, when that sinks in, it's really important, isn't it? Because when we were growing up, well, certainly when people my age were growing up, the budget were really important, particularly for poor people, because there used to be wirelesses everywhere. People say, oh, Six has gone up this and that's gone up that. And it's a different world now, isn't it? It's a completely different world, because nobody's expecting anything out of the budget other than more pain and more misery. And there was an article yesterday at Morning Star, which I don't know if people saw, about Mike Ashley, who's the chairman of Newcastle United, and also the 5th richest man in Britain. And he employs a record number of 0 hours contracts people in Britain. 90% of his workforce, he earned £3.5 billion. 90% of his workforce is on a 0 hours contract. That means that football team is owned by somebody who runs 0 hours contracts and is sponsored by Wonga. So presumably, if you don't get any wages at Sports Direct that week, you go and get a payday loan out from Wonga because you're on a 0 hours contract. And it's just an absolute disgrace that his earnings last year, or his personal wealth, is equivalent to 12 million tourist people in Britain. 12 million people don't have as much wealth as a bloke putting people on 0 hours contracts. And there's a case going on in the courts at the minute in Derbyshire, one of his warehouses in Derbyshire, where a woman was arrested, an employee was arrested for giving birth in the toilets, and she was too frightened to tell her employer that she was pregnant in case she was stopped working, and she was then arrested by the police for endangering the child. Well, there's only one person endangered that child, and it's not the mother. It's a person who's trying to get a living to pay for that child, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. What it's about is providing a decent standard of living. It's about a system where 500,000 people, the majority of whom are women and children, visited food banks this year, and William Hague went to New York last week to get an award for work he'd done for women in Britain. How does this happen? Is it made up? And it's true what Rory Bremner says. You can't have satire on the television anymore because you couldn't make it up. It can't be this satirical. They are absolutely determined to return us to the 1920s and the 1930s, and that's why we want a people's budget. We don't want a situation where Wayne Rooney went to Abu Dhabi 2 years ago and the flight cost £6,000. He slept the whole way there and earned more than that flight being asleep for that 6 hours. That's before his wage went up to £300,000 a week. I'm not blaming them individuals, I'm blaming a system that allows it, and the budget is part of that system. Now the Tories are absolutely convinced, and they know they can't win the next general election. They haven't won one for 22 years and they're not going to win the next one, so they're going to hammer us as much as possible over the next 2 years. They're absolutely going to go for it big style to return the wealth from whence it came pre-1945. And the ability, Chomsky has never been more right than when he said 1% of the population owns society, 14% of people earn a decent living, doctors, politicians, lawyers, reporters, and 84% of us work. And it's the job of that 14% to convince the 85% that the 1% should own it. That is society in a nutshell. And when you talk to ordinary working people, not when you conduct